I ignored 3 separate warnings before everything went wrong. The gas station attendant told me the pass would close by evening. The ranger station had a notice posted about the incoming storm. Even my GPS kept trying to reroute me back to the main highway. But I'd driven mountain roads my whole life and I was already running 2 hours behind schedule. The cabin was supposed to be my weekend escape, a friend's place. Empty until ski season started in 2 weeks. He'd given me the key and the code for the lockbox, told me to enjoy the solitude. I'd been looking forward to it for months, needed the break from work, from everything. The snow started light, almost peaceful, fat flakes drifting down through the pine trees. My truck handled the incline easily, 4-wheel drive gripping the increasingly white road. I'd packed enough food for 3 days. Had firewood waiting at the cabin. Everything was planned perfectly. The turnoff was marked by a wooden sign, barely visible under fresh snow. I took the narrow access road, trees pressing in on both sides. The cabin sat another 2 miles up, nestled in a clearing. I'd seen photos but never visited in person. That's when the wind picked up. Within minutes, the peaceful snowfall transformed into a wall of white. My wipers struggled to keep up. The road disappeared beneath rapidly accumulating drifts. I should have turned back, but I was close now, maybe half a mile from the cabin. My truck lurched suddenly, the back end sliding sideways. I'd hit a patch of ice hidden under the snow. I corrected, but too hard. The truck spun, tires finding no traction. Everything moved in slow motion as I slid toward the edge of the road. The impact wasn't dramatic. Just a heavy thud as my front driver's side wheel dropped into the drainage ditch running alongside the road. The truck tilted at an angle, stuck. I tried reversing, tried rocking it forward. The tires just spun uselessly. I sat there for a moment, engine running, heat blasting. The cabin was close, maybe a 10-minute walk. I had my heavy coat, boots, gloves. The storm was bad, but I'd walked through worse. The smart move was to stay with the truck, but the temperature was dropping fast, and I could feel the cold seeping in despite the heater working overtime. I grabbed my pack with food and supplies, made sure I had my phone and the cabin key. The walk would be rough, but manageable. I'd get to the cabin, wait out the storm, deal with the truck tomorrow when conditions improved. The moment I stepped outside, I realized I'd made a mistake. The wind hit like a physical force, nearly knocking me down. Snow stung my face, found every gap in my clothing. Visibility was maybe 10 feet, but turning back meant spending the night in a tilted truck with limited fuel. Forward was my only real option. I followed the road, staying close to the tree line for reference. The cold was immediate and brutal, seeping through my layers. My face went numb within minutes. I kept my head down, counting steps, trying to estimate distance. The cabin appeared sooner than expected, a dark shape emerging from the white. Relief flooded through me. Fumbled with the lockbox, my fingers already clumsy from cold. The key was there, exactly where it should be. The door was unlocked. That stopped me. My friend had specifically mentioned locking up when he'd left last month, making sure everything was secure for winter. Maybe he'd forgotten, or maybe the property manager had been by to check on things. I pushed the door open and stepped into darkness, found the light switch by memory from the photos I'd seen. Flipped it. Nothing. The power was out, probably taken down by the storm. I'd expected that, had a flashlight in my pack. The beam cut through the darkness, revealing the main room. Everything looked normal. Furniture covered with sheets, kitchen clean, stone fireplace waiting to be used. But something felt off. The air was warmer than it should be. Not warm exactly, but not as cold as an empty cabin in winter should feel. I checked the fireplace. The ashes were fresh, maybe a day or 2 old. Someone had been here recently. The property manager, probably. That would explain the unlocked door and the lingering warmth. I set my pack down and got to work starting a fire. The wood was dry and caught easily. Within minutes, flames were crackling, pushing back the cold and darkness. I pulled one of the sheets off the couch and settled in, exhausted from the walk. That's when I heard it, a creak from upstairs. Old houses settle, especially in extreme cold. I knew that, but this sounded different, deliberate, like weight shifting on floorboards. I called out, asked if anyone was there. My voice sounded small in the empty room. No response, just the wind outside and the fire popping. I grabbed my flashlight and headed for the stairs. The second floor had 3 bedrooms and a bathroom. I checked each room methodically, all empty, all undisturbed, sheets over furniture, dust on surfaces. Nobody had been up here in weeks. Back downstairs, I tried to relax. The fire was warm, the storm was raging outside, and I was safe inside. I made myself some food from my supplies, heated water for coffee on a camping stove I'd brought, tried to convince myself everything was fine. Another creak, this time from the kitchen area. I spun flashlight beam cutting across the room. Nothing, just shadows and covered furniture. But I could swear something had moved, just at the edge of my vision. I checked my phone. No signal, unsurprising. The storm would have taken out the cell towers. I was completely cut off until conditions improved. The fire cast dancing shadows across the walls. Every movement made me jump. I was being paranoid, I told myself. Exhausted from the drive, from the stress of getting stuck, from the brutal walk, my mind was playing tricks. Then I saw the wet footprints, leading from the back door through the kitchen, stopping at the basement entrance. They hadn't been there before. I was sure of it. I would have noticed them when I came in. The prints were fresh. Water was still pooled in the deepest impressions. Someone had come in within the last few minutes while I'd been sitting by the fire. The basement door was closed. I hadn't opened it, hadn't even looked at it since arriving. Now it seemed to loom in the darkness, promising answers I wasn't sure I wanted. I had two choices. Check the basement, or leave. Walking back into the storm was dangerous, potentially fatal. But staying in a house with someone hiding in the basement wasn't much better. I compromised. I'd barricade myself in the main room, wait until morning. The storm had to break eventually. I moved furniture in front of the basement door, piled it high, did the same with the back door. The front door I left accessible, just in case I needed to run. I kept the fire going, kept my flashlight close, sat with my back against the wall where I could watch all the entrances. Hours passed, the wind howled, the fire burned low and I added more wood. My eyes grew heavy despite my fear. I woke to silence, the wind had stopped. Gray dawn light filtered through the windows, the fire had gone out leaving the room cold, and the barricade I'd built in front of the basement door was pushed aside. Door itself stood open. I didn't go down to look, didn't wait another second. I grabbed my pack and ran out into the snow. The storm had passed, leaving everything buried under 3 feet of powder. My truck was completely covered, invisible under the white. Back down the access road toward the burned, my lungs ached from the cold air. It took 2 hours before I heard the sound of a plow truck. The driver saw me stumbling along the road and stopped. He gave me a ride to town, called for a tow truck for my vehicle. I asked him about the cabin, about whether anyone else lived up that access road. He gave me a strange look, said that cabin had been empty for years. The owner died, and the property had been in legal limbo ever since. Nobody had the authority to rent it out or use it. I checked my phone when I got signal back, no messages from my friend. I called him and he answered confused. He'd never given me access to any cabin, didn't own any property in the mountains, had no idea what I was talking about. Someone had contacted me about that cabin. Someone had sent me photos, given me directions, provided a key that worked. Someone had set up the entire thing knowing I'd come during the storm, knowing I'd be trapped. I never found out who. The police investigated but found nothing. The cabin was empty when they checked, no evidence anyone had been there. The lockbox I'd used didn't exist. The key I had didn't match any lock in the building. Sometimes I still get messages, photos of cabins, offers of weekend getaways, different locations. Different names, but I recognize them now. Someone's still out there, still trying, still waiting for the next storm. Working security at a storage facility wasn't glamorous, but it paid better than you'd think. Overnight shifts were lonely, but simple. Watch the cameras, do walking patrols every 2 hours, make sure nobody broke in to steal whatever people kept in those units. Most nights, nothing happened. The storm hit around midnight. I'd been watching it build all evening, dark clouds rolling in from the west. The weather service had issued warnings, but they always did that. Living in snow country meant storms were just part of life. I was the only one on site. The main office was closed and the facility was automated. Renters had codes to get through the gate, could access their units 24/7. My job was just to make sure nobody caused problems and to handle emergencies. The power flickered twice before going out completely. The backup generator kicked in after a few seconds, but it only ran essential systems. Lights in my security office, the front gate, and a few outdoor floods. The rest of the facility went dark. I checked the cameras. Most were still working, showing snow beginning to pile up in the lanes between storage units. Nothing unusual. I noted the time in my log and settled in to wait out my shift. The call button at the front gate buzzed around 1 a.m. Someone wanted in. I checked the camera feed and saw a car stopped at the entrance, headlights cutting through the falling snow. The driver's window was down and I could see an arm reaching out to press the call button again. I picked up the intercom, asked for their unit number and access code. The voice that came back was male, middle-aged, calm. He gave me a unit number and a code. I checked the computer. Everything matched. He was a legitimate renter. I opened the gate and watched on the cameras as his car pulled through. He drove slowly, carefully through the snow-covered lanes. His unit was in the back section, one of the larger ones. The camera showed him parking, getting out with a flashlight, and opening his unit door. Nothing unusual about that. People came at weird hours all the time, especially when they needed something unexpected. I made a note in the log and went back to watching the storm. 10 minutes later, my walking patrol alarm went off. Time to do my rounds. I wasn't thrilled about going out in the storm, but it was part of the job. I bundled up, grabbed my heavy flashlight, and headed out. The cold was immediate and sharp. Snow was already 6 inches deep and coming down hard. I followed my usual route, checking locks, looking for any signs of problems. Everything was secure. I was near the back section when I noticed the car, the one that had come in earlier. It was still parked outside the open unit, but the driver wasn't there. The unit itself was dark, the door standing open. I called out asking if everything was okay. No response, just wind and snow. I approached carefully, shining my flashlight into the unit. Empty, completely empty. No boxes, no furniture, nothing. Just bare concrete and metal walls. But the computer had shown this as an active rental paid through next month. The car door was open too. Keys still in the ignition, engine off. The interior light showed an empty vehicle. No personal items, nothing on the seats or floor. I tried my radio, calling back to the office. Dead. The storm must have been interfering with the signal. I pulled out my phone, no service. I was on my own. Something about this felt wrong. People didn't just vanish. He had to be somewhere in the facility. Maybe he'd gone to use the bathroom in the main building, though that was locked and required my key. I did a wider search, checking nearby units, calling out. Nothing. The snow was falling harder now, covering the car, covering my footprints. I decided to head back to the office and review the camera footage, see if I'd missed something. That's when I saw the footprints, fresh ones leading away from the car. Not toward the main building or the gate, toward the perimeter fence at the back of the property. I followed them, my flashlight beam barely cutting through the snow. They led to the fence, then alongside it, then just stopped. Not at a gate or opening, just stopped in the middle of a section. Like whoever made them had vanished into thin air. I examined the fence, 8 feet of chain link topped with barbed wire. No gaps, no damage, no way to climb without leaving obvious signs. But the prints ended right here. A sound behind me made me spin around. Nothing, just shadows and falling snow. But I had the distinct feeling I was being watched. I headed back toward the office, moving faster now. The footprints I'd followed were already filling in with new snow. In another few minutes, they'd be completely gone. Back at the office, I locked the door and checked the camera feeds. I scrolled back to when the car had entered, watched the driver get out and open his unit. The angle wasn't great and the darkness made it hard to see details, but I could make out his shape, his movements. Then he stepped into the unit and disappeared. The camera showed the empty unit, the open door, but no person. I rewound and watched again. Same thing. He walked in and vanished. I checked the timestamp. That had been 20 minutes ago. I'd been outside for my patrol, would have walked right past that unit, should have seen him unless he'd already been gone by then. I scrolled forward through the footage, watching all the cameras, looking for any sign of him. Nothing. He'd entered the facility and ceased to exist. My phone buzzed. I grabbed it, hope surging. Maybe the signal was back. But it wasn't a call or text. It was a notification from the facility's access system. Someone was using a code at the front gate. The same code the man had used to enter. I switched to the gate camera. No car, no person. Just the gate starting to open on its own. The access code logged in the system. The gate closed after a minute. Standard protocol when nobody drove through. But the code had been entered. Someone or something had triggered it. Another notification. A different unit was being accessed. One in the middle section. I pulled up that camera and watched the unit door roll open. Nobody there. Just an empty unit. Door rising on its own. Then another notification. Another unit. And another. Doors were opening all over the facility, dozens of them. The access codes were legitimate, matching the renter's information, but nobody was there. My computer screen flickered. The camera feeds began to glitch, showing static, then clearing, then glitching again. Through the interference, I could see shapes moving in the lanes, dark figures walking between units. I counted at least a dozen, all moving with purpose. All heading in the same direction, toward my office. I grabbed my phone to call for help, still no signal. I tried the radio again, still dead. The backup generator hummed steadily, keeping the power on, but I was completely cut off. The figures on the cameras were getting closer. I could see them more clearly now when the feeds weren't glitching. They all looked similar, same build, same way of moving, like copies of the same person. All wearing the same clothes the man at the gate had been wearing. The door to my office rattled. I'd locked it, but the sound made me jump. I shone my flashlight at the entrance. Nothing visible through the small window. Another rattle, harder this time, then silence. The camera feeds all went black at once, every single one. The computer screen showed signal lost across all channels, but the power was still on. The lights in my office still worked. Only the cameras were dead. I was blind. No way to see what was happening outside. Then the backup generator died. The sudden silence was deafening. My office lights went out, leaving me in complete darkness except for my flashlight beam. Something hit the office door, hard. The whole frame shook, hit it again. The lock held but barely. I looked around frantically for another exit. The office had a back door, an emergency exit that led to the rear parking lot. I grabbed my keys and ran for it. The door was frozen shut. Ice had formed around the frame during the storm. I threw my weight against it, once, twice. It gave way on the third hit, and I stumbled out into the blizzard. Behind me, I heard the front door of the office finally break. Footsteps inside. Multiple sets. I ran into the storm, not caring about direction, just needing to get away. The snow was knee-deep now, slowing me down. My flashlight beam showed nothing but white in every direction. I ran until my legs gave out, until I couldn't run anymore. Collapsed behind one of the storage units, gasping for air, my lungs burning from the cold. I waited there for hours, listening for sounds of pursuit, hearing nothing but wind. When dawn finally came, the storm had passed. I made my way back to the office. The front door was still broken, hanging open. Inside, everything was destroyed. Computers smashed, furniture overturned, papers everywhere. But no footprints in the snow, no tracks leading away. Just mine, leading from the back door to where I'd hidden. Police found me walking along the road toward town. They investigated, found the damage to the office, but the security footage was corrupted, completely unrecoverable. No way to verify what I'd seen. They checked the unit that the man had accessed. It wasn't empty like I'd seen. It was full of boxes, normal storage items, and the computer showed it had been rented for 3 years, not just opened that night. No record of anyone entering the facility after 6 p.m. The access logs showed nothing unusual. The gate never opened after the last employee left. I quit that job, never went back, not even to collect my last paycheck. Sometimes I drive past that storage facility and I can see they've hired a new night security guard. I wonder if they've had any strange visitors. I wonder if they've seen the same things I saw, but I don't stop to ask. Some questions are better left unanswered. Family appeared out of nowhere. One moment I was alone on the highway, the next I was slamming on my brakes to avoid hitting a minivan stopped sideways across both lanes. The blizzard had reduced visibility to almost nothing, and they'd materialized like ghosts in my headlights. I was driving home from a conference, a 6-hour trip that had already stretched to 9 because of the weather. The highway was officially closed, but I'd thought I could make it through before the worst hit. I'd been wrong. The minivan's hazard lights blinked weakly through the snow. I pulled over carefully, leaving my engine running and my lights on. Stepping out into the storm was like walking into a wall of ice and wind. Someone emerged from the van. A man, maybe 40, wearing a light jacket completely inadequate for the cold. He looked panicked. He said their van had died, just stopped running. His wife and 2 kids were inside and they'd been stuck for almost an hour. He tried calling for help, but no signal. No other cars had come by until me. I looked into the van. A woman sat in the passenger seat, 2 small children in the back, maybe 6 and 8 years old. The woman smiled and waved, but there was something off about it, too calm for the situation. I told the man I'd give them a ride. My SUV could fit all of them. We'd have to leave the van, but staying out here wasn't an option. The temperature was dropping below 0 and the storm showed no signs of stopping. He seemed relieved, too relieved. But I pushed that thought aside. They were a family in trouble. What else could I do? We got everyone transferred over. The process took longer than it should have. The kids moved slowly, mechanically. The woman kept that same strange smile, but I attributed it to shock, to cold, to fear. People react differently to stress. Once everyone was in my vehicle, I pulled back onto the highway. The going was slow, maybe 20 miles per hour. The snow was accumulating faster than the plows could keep up, assuming any plows were even out in these conditions. The man sat in the passenger seat next to me. He didn't speak, just stared straight ahead. In the back, the woman sat between the 2 children. Nobody talked. No crying kids, no worried conversation. Just silence except for my engine and the wind outside. I tried to make small talk, asked where they were headed, where they were from. The man's answers were vague. Just traveling, he said, going to visit family. Normal things, but his tone was flat, emotionless. I checked the rearview mirror. The woman was still smiling, staring straight ahead. The kids sat perfectly still, hands folded in their laps. Something was very wrong, but I couldn't pinpoint what. The GPS on my phone was useless, the signal constantly dropping. But I knew this highway had driven it hundreds of times. There was a truck stop about 15 miles ahead. We could wait out the storm there, get help for their van. That's when the man spoke again. He said we should take the next exit instead. There was a motel just off the highway, closer than the truck stop. I didn't remember any motel on this stretch of road, but maybe I was wrong. Maybe there was one I'd never noticed. Still, the truck stop was a sure thing. Open 24/7, always busy, safe. I said we'd stick with the truck stop. It wasn't far. The man's hand moved to his pocket. Something about the gesture made my heart rate spike. I glanced over and saw him pull out a folded piece of paper. He opened it slowly, deliberately, and held it where I could see while still watching the road. It was a photo. My house. A picture of my house, taken from the street. Recent, based on the fall decorations I'd put out in October. My blood went cold. I looked at him, then quickly back at the road. He was still expressionless, still staring ahead. I asked how he had that photo, where he got it. He said I should take the next exit, go to the motel, do exactly what he said, otherwise things would get complicated. In the rearview mirror, the woman's smile had changed. It was wider now, showing too many teeth. The kids still sat motionless, but their eyes were on me, watching. My mind raced. I couldn't stop the car, couldn't force them out into the storm. Even if they were threatening me, leaving them stranded was a death sentence. But driving them wherever they wanted to go meant I was completely under their control. I saw headlights ahead. Another vehicle coming from the opposite direction. A semi-truck moving slowly through the storm. As it passed, I laid on my horn. Long, desperate blasts. The truck's brake lights flared. It was slowing down, maybe pulling over. The driver had heard me. The man beside me moved fast. His hand shot out and grabbed the wheel, jerking it hard to the right. The SUV swerved, tires losing traction on the ice. We spun once, twice, before sliding off the road into the deep snow on the shoulder. The impact wasn't hard, but it was enough to bury us. Snow piled against the windows, blocking the view. The engine stalled. I tried to restart it, but the man's hand closed around my wrist. Strong grip, painful. In the back, I heard the woman's voice for the first time. Soft, almost musical. She said I should have listened. The kids still hadn't made a sound. Outside, I could hear the semi-truck. It had stopped, probably pulling over to help. The driver would have seen us go off the road. Help was right there, just yards away. I hit the horn with my free hand. The man tightened his grip, but I kept hitting it again and again. The semi-driver had to hear it. A flashlight beam cut through the snow piled against my window. Someone was coming. The man released my wrist and opened his door, stepping out into the storm. The woman and kids followed, moving in that same strange synchronized way. I scrambled out my side, nearly falling in the deep snow. The semi-driver was there. Large man in a heavy coat. He asked if everyone was okay, if anyone was hurt. The family stood together on the other side of the SUV. In the beam of the truck driver's flashlight, I got my first clear look at them. There was something wrong with their skin, too pale, almost gray. And their eyes reflected the light like animals, glowing slightly in the darkness. The truck driver saw it too. I watched his expression change from concern to confusion to fear. He took a step back. The man from the family spoke. He said there'd been a misunderstanding, an accident. We just needed help getting back on the road. But the truck driver was already backing toward his rig. He told us to stay put, said he was calling for help. His hand went to his radio as he climbed back into his cab. The family didn't move, just stood there in the falling snow. Watching him, watching me. The driver's voice crackled over his CB radio calling for police, for emergency services, giving our location. I ran toward the truck, slipping in the snow, desperate to get away from the family. The police arrived 40 minutes later. 2 state troopers in a 4-wheel drive cruiser. But by then, the family was gone. Just tracks leading away from my vehicle, disappearing into the storm. My SUV was empty. No sign anyone had been inside except me. No fingerprints, no belongings, nothing. The photo the man had shown me wasn't in the vehicle. The troopers were skeptical, thought maybe I'd been driving too long, that exhaustion and storm stress had caused hallucinations. But the semi-driver backed me up. He'd seen them too, seen their faces, their eyes. They checked my vehicle thoroughly. Found something in the back seat hidden under the floor mat. A small electronic device like a GPS tracker. Someone had been following me, knew exactly where I'd be when I'd be alone on that highway. The abandoned minivan was never found. No record of it in any database. No reports of a stolen vehicle matching the description. I moved 3 months later, sold my house, took a job in a different state. Because sometimes I still see them. Standing at the edge of parking lots, watching from across streets. The man, the woman, the 2 silent children, always together, always watching, always waiting for the next storm.